Good afternoon and Merry Christmas, even though you might be watching this a year from now. It's really exciting to be going into Christmas 2018. Just finished up my last present. I made a little call to Florida, got that fishing charter that I'd like to be going on myself, but I bought it for my parents. So we'll see. Maybe I'll jump down there and go with them. So I'm attorney Peter Olson, Chicago Family Law Group. We protect the legal needs of middle income families and protect children so that their futures are secure. We're in the divorce and child custody space. That's all we do. That's all we've been doing for the last half dozen years. That's what I've personally been involved with for since 2005, 13, 14 years. Our firm has represented and assisted and supported thousands of clients, and we can help you. We can help you. This is another one of our how-to videos that I just like to have out there. Um, Frankly, because this is one of the 5 to 7 most popular questions that I get. I think we have a couple how-to videos up on our YouTube channel already on how to handle an uncontested divorce and how to get protected parenting time. Those are also in the top 5 to 7 types of cases that we handle regularly. So here we go. You ready? You want to know how to win custody of your kids? Because that's a big question. That's a big and important thing when it comes to supporting families and protecting children. And it's a big part of what we do here at Chicago Family Law Group, familylawchicago.com. Here we go. Ready? I have 4 bullet points written down. One of them has a bunch of subpoints, but I'm trying to keep this video at about 10 minutes. Let's see if I'm successful or not, okay? Here we go. Number 1, how do you win custody of your kids? Here's number 1, you avoid the fight. You avoid the fight. There aren't that many really knockdown, drag-out custody cases out there. A lot of people give us that initial call, I want full custody of my kids. But, really think about that. Really think about that. When you're talking about custody, and what you're really talking about is the right to make significant major life decisions with regards to your son or daughter. Are there really disputes about that with your child or with the other parent, with your ex-wife, your current wife, current husband? You disagree about where your son or daughter goes to school. You disagree about medical providers. To me, those are the two big things: medical matters and schooling. So really look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you fighting for the sake of fighting, or do you actually disagree about those major life issues with regards to your kids? So think about that first, because I think from my experience, there are a lot of avoidable custody fights, okay? Avoid the fight. Here's another little trick, and actually a very good strategy, is you pre-decide things. In other words, if the other parent has sole custody, or if you're going to do shared custody, shared decision making, fine. Sometimes that language doesn't matter, because what we do, is you pre-decide. You actually put in a judgment, an allocation or custody judgment, specifically where a child's going to go to school, who his doctor is, who his dentist is, who his or her counselor is, what religion they're going to be brought up in, what extracurricular activities they're going to be involved in. That's actually a great move, and I think you would find that's a play we would do a lot, because what you get a lot of are people who go through the fight, really, in my experience, just for a word on a piece of paper. Oh, I want joint custody. I want shared custody. When you get to the end of that, okay, you've been in court for 2 years, you've hurt your life, you've spent a lot of your time and money, and what are you really getting for that? What are you really getting for that? So, number 1, avoid the fight, and you avoid the fight by really asking yourself, Are there areas of disagreement? And two, even if there are, pre-decide the areas so you really aren't even having a future decision that somebody has to make. Rather, it's in a court order now that little Johnny is going to go to Washington Elementary School, in Wilmette, Illinois, and that's it. There is no future decision, and they're going to go to New Trier High School is that Winnetka or Wilmette? I'm forgetting. It's been a while since I played some high school sports up there, but right, avoid the fight. Number two, focus on time. Here we go. Focus on parenting time. Let me tell you my bias and my focus in these cases. I personally think that the thing to fight for is parenting time versus a word on a piece of paper with regards to custody, okay? Because my experience, important point, underline, is you want to get as much time as possible because in a lot of ways, time controls decisions. Time controls what your son or daughter is doing. Time controls who's doing medical matters. Time controls who's going to parent-teacher conferences, sporting events, taking them to, the midweek group at church, okay? That maybe should be my first point, but I am really strongly focus on time because, just to go back to my previous point, there are plenty of people who, they win sole custody or they win the right to actually have shared custody with the other parent. But you know what? In a lot of those cases, let's just say, let me play this stereotype. A guy wins joint custody. However, his parenting time is still only alternate weekends and the occasional holiday. And you know what? The reality is the other parent, the mother who has 80% of the parenting time, is going to dominate that kid's life in terms of what those kids are thinking, doing, and how their major life decisions are going to be made, even if a court order says it's supposed to be shared. Because if it's an 80-20 split, in my experience, that 80% person's going to drive the train, whether he or she has joint custody or he or she has sole custody. So that's really my big emphasis point, is focus on time. Good parents are entitled to the maximum involvement with their children. Now, is every case a 50-50 parenting time case? We might be going down that road in Illinois. It's very possible we're going down that road. However, even and I'm saying legally in the legislature, but even where I am today at the end of 2018, where that isn't the law yet, good parents are going to be getting 30, 40, 50% parenting time if they're engaged and want that time. So that's the big point. Get that time and don't just be the alternate weekend guy because you need the time. Time drives influence. I think that's the best way to put it. Time with kids drives influence in kids' lives, okay? So how do you win custody of your kids? One, you avoid that fight or you pre-decide that fight, right? Two, you fight for time because regardless of what paperwork says, time really drives influence. Time drives influence. Now, number three, fight to win. Fight to win. And here's where we're at. We have 75 to 100 open matters here at Chicago Family Law Group right now, okay? You'd be amazed at how few cases actually get to the point where you have a knockdown, drag-out custody trial, custody battle. As somebody who only does this very very focused and specialized in our practice area. We have a full-on custody trial 1 to 3 times a year. It's rare. It's rare that you actually get to that point. But when you do, let's win it, and let's talk about how to win, how to fight to win at that custody trial. Let me give you some nuggets that I've developed over the years as somebody, I don't have the number on the W side, but has 0 losses in contested custody trials, okay? First, and these are bullet points under the fight to win part of a custody case, okay? 1, you need to be facilitating parenting time with the other parent. That's number 1, absolutely. Judges take the viewpoint that if I give custody to this parent, I need to know that she is going to facilitate time with the other parent. And if me as judge, if I don't think this parent's going to facilitate time with the other parent, I'm going to give custody to that other parent who I know is going to facilitate time with the other parent. That's a very, very underlined key point. You know, there's verbiage and you hear it said, and I've experienced it a lot. You know, courts want kids to have relationships with both parents, and if there's any indication that giving custody to one parent is going to mean the other parent's going to be locked out, they're going to give custody to the parent who's open to facilitating and encouraging a child's relationship with that other parent, okay? So you need to facilitate. 2, you need to be involved. And what I mean by that is in the pre-court part of a case, you need to have a track record of involvement. You need to have that track record of being a person who's involved with parent-teacher conferences, being a person who's involved with your son or daughter's activities at school. Because, right, if we're getting into court and now your son or daughter's 8 years old, and okay, great. At this point forward, you're going to try to show a court really well that you're involved and you want custody of your kids. But, you know, the more important point is, what was the picture the last 8 years before this got into court? Okay, you follow? So you need to be involved. You need to be involved from day one, or quite honestly, you don't even, don't fight the custody fight because you're not going to win that fight. A real important picture is what was, who was really doing the majority and the important parenting time before this case gets into court. I think that's a big question judges are asking themselves, okay? So facilitate parenting time with the other parent, be involved. Think about your support system. Your support system matters. And what I mean by that oftentimes is extended family, friends, daycare for the kids, this kind of thing. That's an important piece. I think everybody knows you can't really parent on your own. Right? If you have a career, if you're working, you need people around you to care and supervise your child. You got to have that plan in place, whether it's grandma, whether it's, daycare X, after school program X, you name it. But you need that support system because the reality is nobody is an effective parent just, as an island by themselves. 4th, letter D, I guess, under fight to win. Make sure your son or daughter is getting to school and performing at school. That's not to say we need straight A students, but I'll tell you, it's an absolute win-loss kind of a situation if you, when a child is living with you, are not getting your kid to school and you start to have the absences and the tardies. My last big custody battle, that was the determining factor, absolutely the determining factor. We were just pulling out, right, this is easy stuff. We were just pulling out school records showing 40, 50, 60% of the time, this daughter in this case was just not at school. I mean, that was a huge issue. And the judge flipped custody from mom to our client, a real good guy, good dad. So Yeah, be involved and make sure that education's happening. Again, you don't need perfect performance. We're not all right. We're not all into school. We're not all, academics aren't all of our strengths, but you got to be there. Your kid has to be there. I mean, the reality is, that kid needs to be getting that socialization and need to be graduating from high school. Those are just minimum requirements in this day and age. There can't be questions about school attendance, school tardies. And what level of maturity do you have personally as a parent? That's an important issue. I can think of another case. It's a different case, but it was also a father we were representing winning custody. And in this particular case, I thought one of the big factors was the mom was real immature. In other words, I'm not sure she was like parenting herself well. That might not be the right way to put it, but she didn't have a very developed career. She was still living with her parents, um, and just struck somebody as really sort of a head in the clouds person who was not ready, right? To like her self leadership was pretty weak. I'm calling that maturity, but another way, her self leadership was pretty bad. And so now you're in court trying to basically say, hey, I want to lead this kid in this particular case was maybe 5 to 7. You want to be the leader of this kid's life, and your leadership of yourself as a 35-year-old has you kind of like unemployed, living with your parents, hardly able to function as yourself. So that was a big one too. So when we're talking about that big and important category of, hey, now we're in court and now we're fighting to win, think about those subpoints. Facilitating the other parent's parenting time. Are you involved with your kids' stuff before the case gets into court? What's your support system? Family supervision, options for your kid. 4, um, you know, are you promoting education involvement with your son or daughter? And are you mature? Are you ready to be, a rock for your son or daughter? Okay. So how are you going to win custody of your kid? Sometimes you're going to avoid the fight. Sometimes you're going to pre-decide stuff strategically, and right, avoiding the fight wins the fight in a sense, if you want to put it that way. You're going to really be focused on getting as much parenting time temporary and permanently, because in my opinion, time means influence, not a word on a piece of paper, but rather time with your kid drives influence, i.e., major life factors, regardless of what a court order says. Lastly, or point 3, fight to win. Fight to win. Here's my wrap. Even though sometimes it's great to avoid the fight, sometimes it's absolutely worth the fight, and you can change the trajectory of your children's entire lives by fighting for custody. Okay? When you have a couple good parents, the reality is a lot of times it might not matter that much. Are they spending 60% of their time with dad and 40 with mom, or vice versa? A lot of cases it doesn't matter. But I'll tell you, we'll certainly run into situations where, here's an exact case we had. This guy, we were involved with his divorce. I think he was just kind of wanting to get it done with. And he essentially let the mom, ex-wife, have custody of these 2 kids. Okay? So what happened next? These kids got in horrible shape. And I'm talking about suicidal shape, not just, they got a B in, social studies class. I'm talking about cutting. I'm talking about threats on their lives and absolutely screwed up lives. 2 years ballpark later, this guy rehired us. We flipped custody to him, put his daughters on an entirely different life path. Okay, you follow? So if your situation presents that sort of stark contrast, you're able to provide an entirely different life and a better life for your kids. Fight for it. Fight for it. There are a lot of cases where um, you have two good parents and sort of your kids are going to be successful kind of regardless how it goes. But if you're in one of those situations where one of the parents is a disaster, alienating kids, not leading kids academically, socially, and has messed up relationships of their own as an adult, you got to fight for custody of your kids so that their lives are a lot better. Okay, so there's my wrap. So you got those 3 or 4 points on how to win custody of your kids. I'm attorney Peter Olson, Chicago Family Law Group. Check us out, familylawchicago.com. You can chat. There's a chat bot there right now. Your next action with us, do a potential new client meeting. No charge. You want to do a quick call? You want to do an in-person meeting? We are here to serve you.